there is tremendous power in being positive and to like kind of see the bright side of things. At the same time, I think it's important to not ignore the opposite, right? So when we have negative thoughts, when we have fears, when we have doubts, our tendency, we would think, oh, I need to ignore those. I need to shove those down and stay focused on the positive. And I would say what my approach has been is it's just a little bit different, but it's a powerful distinction. I see feelings and emotions, they're almost like food, and we have to metabolize them. If we don't, then we start to get constipated essentially with all of this anger and frustration and hate and resentment. You need to metabolize those things. How do we metabolize them? We actually allow ourselves to feel them. And let me give you an example. When I first, so I started a podcast 4 years ago. It's called What's Working Now. And when I first started it, I was doing these interviews with people, which is what you do when you have podcasts. And I'm interviewing this one guy who he had reached out, wanted me essentially to be a client. And I responded to him and I said, I appreciate everything that you're sharing. It's a no for me. And I didn't ignore him, right? I acknowledged him. I acknowledged what he was trying to do. And I told him no. A couple months later, I was speaking at an event. He was in the audience and he came up to me. He was like, Katie, I reached out to probably 100 people like you. And I got a few yeses, but no nos. You were the only no. And he was like, I felt something in that moment. Like it was amazing. And so like, this is how we met. So I end up interviewing him on my podcast. And the purpose of the podcast is not for me to be the expert. He's the expert. And so I'm asking all these questions. I'm like diving deep into his expertise. We're having this incredible conversation and we're about to end the conversation. He said, hold on, can I say something to your audience? I said, sure. What are you going to say? He goes on and on and on. This almost gets me emotional now about what an exceptional person I am. He was like, look, Katie sits here and she interviews all these experts, but you need to know she's the expert. And what this woman has done and accomplished, not just in her professional life. Can you tell it matters to me, Adam?
Yeah.
Like, he saw me and he saw that not only I had built this multi-million-dollar international business, but I had done it in a way that allowed me to be with my kids, that strengthened my marriage, that strengthened my faith. He was like, this is unheard of, because he's a guy who helps people who have exited their companies, invest their companies. So he sees people at that inflection point, and I was different. I was very different. And so he's just like pouring into the audience to make sure they know that Katie is a really exceptional human being. So it was really nice. It made me emotional, even though it was super unexpected. And I hopped off. And what happened on the backside of this, Adam, was really unexpected. The next morning, I'm, post exercise, I'm showering, I'm getting ready because I have another podcast interview. And in this moment, my mind starts to attack me. And it's saying things like, you're not who he thinks you are. You're not that exceptional woman. That you've had major failures that nobody knows about. And you're hiding things from people. And you're like, there are truths about you that are lurking in the shadows that nobody knows. And you are a fraud. This is my mind saying this to me. And I'm terrified. So what do I want to do in that moment? I want to ignore it. I'm like, I want to oppose it. I want to shove it down, be like, no, I'm not. I'm something amazing. I'm something special, just like he told me what I was. But I know this principle to be true. If I shove it down, it will stay there. And I like build up this pain body, as Eckhart Tolle calls it. And I don't want that. I don't want that to be disrupting my life and influencing my actions and decisions in the day. I want to metabolize it. How do you metabolize it? You open yourself up to it and you feel it. And so I did. I'm standing there in my bathroom. I'm like, and I wanted to push it down and ignore it. And I was like, no, I'm going to feel this right now. And it's terrifying, right? The overall thing I was going to feel is that you are a fraud. And I remember like standing there and like kind of rolling my shoulders back and up and projecting my chest out and even like turning my palms forward. And I was like, I'm going to feel this. It was terrifying. I thought I was going to die. Like it was like I was standing on train tracks and there was a freight train coming at me. And it was like, get off the tracks, Katie. And I was like, I'm going to feel this right now. And I feel this like really scary negative vibration. It started at my feet and it like starts to consume my whole body. And it's scary, Adam. It's like really scary. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, you got an interview in like 7 minutes, girl. Like, you need to process this fast. And I knew that moving your body helps you kind of like metabolize it. And so I like finished putting my mascara on. So I was all ready, but I'm still feeling all of these things. I run outside and I hopped onto the trampoline and I just started jumping. And I was like, okay, I felt this. And I was like open to it that I'm a fraud. I felt it and I was open to maybe that is true. And I jumped until I only had like 2 minutes left, and I get off the trampoline. I'm walking across the grass, across my yard towards my studio, and I felt amazing. I felt like the most undestructible person in the world. And I was so excited to step into my next interview. So I didn't even necessarily know like what the new belief was, but I did know I was not a fraud. Like that had passed, that train had passed, and I was still alive and I had survived it. And it was no longer inside of me. It was no longer weighing down my shoulders. It was no longer having me in this internal battle of like trying to not believe that I was a fraud, but trying to do this expert interview, right? Like I had processed it and it was gone. And I was on to the next thing. And by the way, to finish this off, when you do something like this, you create this space within you for a new story. If we don't intentionally create the story that fills that space, life's going to fill it in with a default, which probably is not going to get you what you want. So, long story short, on the other side of that, after I did my interview, I made a decision on who I am. I'm not that fraud, right? And I felt that I was open to it, but it passed. And I'm like, it's not there anymore. And I'm the real deal. Like, I'm Katie Richardson, get out of my way. That's the kind of thing I filled it with.